Hi, everybody. This is Maria Burke here with another 321 Focus Together interview. And today, my guest is Garry Cahill. Garry, you're very welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Maria. So I'm Garry Cahill. My background is in coaching in sport. Currently, I travel quite a lot on the tennis tour with athletes, and I have a program for coaching mainly performance tennis players. So that's my background. I've mostly been involved in sport at a high level all my life.
Okay, right. And I think this whole coaching thing is very interesting because I am a life coach. And I would love to know, because I've never actually had this conversation, and I'm sure an awful lot of life coaching, I wasn't listening too well in the beginning of my classes. I'm sure a lot of life coaching comes from professional coaching in sport. In terms of, I would imagine, I know you will have a physical coaching practice, but I would imagine there's also an emotional and a mental practice that you do for athletes.
Yeah. Well, when you're coaching a sport, like you are coaching the person first, and then you're coaching the sport, and all these athletes, they're completely different. So really, to be successful in coaching somebody, you firstly have to know them. You have to know the emotional side of what they're like, and that is really the key piece. Because at the end of the day, when athletes look back on careers, it really comes down to like the relationships that they have and the trust they have in the coaches that they work with, and your ability to deal with them mentally in the different phases that they go through, as like when they're growing up, for example, or the ups and downs that they have in their career. So there's a lot of the mental side of dealing with both male and female athletes, which can be different as well when it comes to coaching in sports. So I'd say it's fairly similar to life, because if they're not happy in their life, they're not going to perform. So you've got to get that piece right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So, is there a specific techniques that you use with them, or do you use something different with different people? I presume you're like me; you've got a big, uh, sort of a toolkit of different things you use with different people, or do you have like a program you take them through?
No, it does depend on the person, but I think it's really important that you listen to people. Uh, and for me, it's not like one tool that I would use with an athlete, but what you've learned to do as you get more experienced is really give time to listen to what the athlete thinks or what they feel. Uh, that is really the key piece. I mean, they have to feel firstly that they can talk, but they also have to feel that the coach really listens, and that when they're listening, they're not judging the person. They're actually just a lot of time giving the athlete a chance to say what they feel. And then, if you have some things that might help, like some tools or techniques that might help, you'll use them. But you firstly have to really find out what's going on. And that's about listening.
It certainly is, and not everybody is a good listener, and it takes a lot of time
Yeah.
to. It's a skill some people do have naturally, but a
Yeah.
lot of people, I know they're always saying that, is like a lot of people they're only listening to get their own bit in or to ask the next question, which I've got to
Yeah.
try not to be doing at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not really listening to so that they understand somebody. And yeah, so listening, and I know myself as well, sometimes even when I've been gone for therapy, just when somebody really listens to you and you really feel you've been heard and there's no judgment, sometimes
Yeah.
that's all it takes. That can be just the piece that might release it all itself. So
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting. The thing I really want to get in on here though is, do you use visualization techniques in terms of like visualizing like winning the match, or the way I would be doing that with my life in terms of things I want to achieve? do you actively do that with all your athletes, or is it something you do or not? Or
No, well, some athletes actually they do it and they practice it, but some athletes do it without practicing it. So they might you know talk through scenarios without closing their eyes and actually visualize it, which means they are looking into the future and they are looking at how it could potentially be. Yeah, and some athletes go through techniques to visualize what is actually going to happen, or situations and matches that they want to get ready for. But for me, with these techniques, it has to be something that the athlete really likes to do and wants to do. So as a coach, there's no point in forcing what you think is something that really works on an athlete or a person unless they really believe that it works. And if they buy into it, yeah, the visualization tools are really, really useful. And then also, the visualization of like different scenarios, but then also watching themselves is very useful. So, post analysis of what's happened, particularly the positives that may have happened. So looking at yourself in real time, like video, etc., is also a useful tool.
yeah, that's very interesting, and it's something that you can actually do as an athlete, but it's not something we're always good at doing if we're using things to try and create our lives. So that's
Yeah,
a very good point. And I like that as well, focusing on the positives and the progress you're making, because it
yeah,
can be so easy to slip into focusing on the
yeah,
negative.
yeah.
So let's leave the athletes aside for a minute. And so, how are you personally coping with this pandemic? Because, as you said at the beginning, you're used to doing traveling and
Yeah.
etc. So, how is it for you now that you're on lockdown?
Well, I mean, it's definitely not easy for me being locked down because I'm active and like to be active. I feel this is nearly like getting myself ready for what retirement would be like. It's like yeah, I don't you don't have the same uh, structure, etc. But on the other hand, there are things I think that make it a bit easier. So what I have been trying to do is give myself structure, and I've actually started to create other habits that I wouldn't have had because I like habits and they're important. So I started to create other habits. So I still try to get up early in the morning because I think it would be easy to just lie in bed and start to feel, maybe think a bit too much or start to think about everything that's going wrong. So the first thing I do is get out of bed early. And I found a little coffee shop that sells coffee out through the window in the mornings. So I go there the same as if I was getting up to go to work, same time. And then I would always try to set out things that I want to do for that day. So I like to use goals. So I would have some things to do for certain hours in the day. Uh, and I try to stick to that. And I always make sure that I put in some exercise into that day because
Okay.
I will be used to that.
Yeah. So presumably, have you had to change your exercise routine? Because I know anybody who was swimming can't do that at the moment. So
Yeah,
have you had to change? And what
yeah.
have you changed it to? Because I think this is something that people need a bit of help with. Do you know what I mean? Because people at the moment have nearly overwhelmed. And if somebody can give some tips on what we can use instead, that would be great.
Okay, well, what I think you need to be careful of is with the exercise, still doing things that are productive instead of just doing things, if you know what I mean. So, for example, now because where you can't move outside 2K, you have to change the way you run and the route you take. So what I try to do is I break it up into every second day. So I would go for a run one day, uh, and for people listening, it depends on what your levels of fitness are, how much you do, but just to go outside, run, even walk, and I change that route all the time. So I'm not going on the same route every time, because I think that actually becomes a little bit monotonous and boring to do that. So I will constantly change it. And then on the second day, so one day is a run or an active. On the second day, then I do some exercises at home. So that would be, strength work, flexibility work, and you can do a lot without a gym. So I just started to use like elastic bands instead of gym equipment. So I ordered some very simple tubing, elastic tubing, and I do all the strength work using this tubing, or you can do it using your own body weight. There's so much exercise you can do that you don't need any equipment for, and a lot of it is available on YouTube. But I just think it's important to vary that, so it's not the same every day. And I also like to set, some goals when I do the exercise, that, I might go for 2 kilometers, I might do 3 the next day. So it's kind of, structured, but that's the way I like it.
Yeah, and you like a bit of competing against yourself and a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And to have that sense, and I think that's a really important thing. Everything I'm listening to, about creating the routine and creating the goals, they're all things I've in place for myself as well, because I just love not just the structure of the routine, but also the sense of achievement. And I think it's just so
Yeah.
important for us at the moment. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think your tips are great. I think we have to get creative about using what we've got around us.
Yeah.
And as well, like, it is still possible to get things, an order online and get things delivered for.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. Now, as regards your regular physical routine, would you always have a different thing every day anyway? Or do you normally do more or less the same routine every day?
No, I never do the same thing every day. I always have mixed it up between doing strength work and endurance work, because I think it's very important to maintain strength. And I'm not doing it to like be a bodybuilder or anything, but just to maintain your strength. I think it's really important. And it's also important to do endurance for, heart health reasons. So I've always mixed it up between strength and endurance. And I would try to mix the exercises, because your body also gets used to doing the same exercises. So for example, if you do something completely different and you feel sore the next day, you know that you've used muscles that you haven't used before. So you should try to do a varied activities, more so than just going to the gym and doing exactly the same thing all the time. I don't think you get the same benefit.
Okay, right. So how about somebody who's turned into a bit of a couch potato like me, right? Who used
Yeah.
to play a bit of tennis and swim and do her dancing and her yoga and all the rest. If you've actually got to a stage where you're doing very little, what would you recommend for people now? Is it just to go for a walk for every day, or what would you recommend? If somebody's listening and is thinking, do you know what, the weather's great, I have an opportunity to create a new good habit of looking after myself better, what would you recommend?
Well, the first thing is, is to actually get up and do it, because that's the toughest step, is to actually get yourself up and start doing something. And I don't think it's really about what you do. It's more to just start to do something. And that's really to sit down and try to just set out, what would be an achievement for them within a week. It might be just to get up and start to walk a couple of 100 meters, depending on what their fitness is. But then, to write down on Monday, I've done a couple of 100 meters. On Tuesday, I'm going to do an extra 50 meters. But to really stick to it and try not to miss the days, because it's when you start to get a bit too relaxed on yourself, when you don't feel like 100% that you want to do it, that's when all these habits start to go back again. So for me, the first step is to actually set that goal and just get up and do it, because it's easy to sit and not do anything. But when you actually start to do it, that becomes the norm. And it's making that change of behavior from not doing it to starting to do it. And that's where you really have to make that decision that this is something that you want to do. And that's, for me, the first thing, that people have to decide they want to do it and then just start. And your body knows when you're at your max and you're not able to go any further. So I would say start easy and just set some goals and gradually build that up. But reward yourself for doing that as well. It's not just like it has to be military all the time. If you do that and you achieve something, that's great. And then you don't have to do it every day. So you can also have a reward for, but it's that first step to decide you're going to do it and then to start.
And put a little plan in place.
Yeah, put a plan in place.
Yeah, and then tick. Well, I'm really all about ticking the boxes. So I know when I sign up to something, and it's usually I fall off the bandwagon. The habits get broken if you go on holidays and things. And then you have to go and put them. If there's some sort of break.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'm listening. I'm hearing. I'll make a plan. And nearly everything else is sorted. Brilliant. So look, is there anything else you want to share with us? For anybody who's listening about this quarantine, or how you found it, or if you've got a message for the men, because I think the men are the ones who need more support. I think the women, as I was saying to you earlier on, the women are all, we'll all be chatting to each other. We're probably doing our yoga and our meditation or whatever anyway. But I think a lot of men could do with some support and guidance. Now, I could be wrong. That could be just my view. But, have you any words of wisdom for us?
No, I mean, it's difficult for everyone. Like none of us are enjoying it. And I suppose, look, it is only temporary as well. And it's not forever. We look like we're doing okay and things will start to change. So whatever happens next, it's going to be better than it was. We're not going to go down to you can't move outside half a kilometer. It's probably going to be that you can start to move a bit more, and maybe we'll start to actually appreciate that we can go down and have a coffee and we can, do these things again. It will actually get easier. And I think we should look at it like, well, if we survived the pubs being closed and we survived all these things for that long, we've done actually great. And we should be looking at, we've only got another, 10, 11 days of this kind of lockdown, hopefully. And if we survive this long, we can do that. Stick to habits, exercise. If you don't exercise, make your mind up to do something and do it and register it, log it. But I'm surprised that we're able to shut down the way we've shut down. And, I think a lot of good things could actually come out of it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of blessings. I think a lot of people are actually, got a chance for a rest. Not having to take a rest and feel the rest that they're missing out. It was like I had overheard a great conversation. Two guys when I was in the car waiting for the bank, and two lads in their 60s down Main Street, Mullingar, saying, "Oh, how do you feel about the fact that the pubs are closed?" And the other guy says, "Well, to be honest, I don't mind, because I don't mind that they're closed, because at least if I'm not there, I'm not missing anything." Do you know this?
Yeah.
It's okay for the pubs to be closed, and they could be doing something else. So I think a lot of us are going to have changed our habits by the end of all this. And probably in a good way. And like you say, we'll be grateful for things that we can do, like go for the coffee or meet up with people. I'm hoping there'll be a whole new appreciation for just how amazing life really is for us, because we're very blessed in Ireland here. So
yeah. I think it's, look, for men and for women, I think it's the same. Potentially, I suppose people who are on their own and don't have, people to communicate all the time with that they would have had before. That, I suppose, can be more difficult for people. But it's amazing how, like, this technology makes it easier. So if this happened 50 years ago. I remember that when it happened in, what was it, 1918 or 19, I'd say it was a lot more difficult for people then than it is now.
Yeah, but the other thing that's coming straight into my head, Gary, is that they probably didn't have the same level of fear, because you're talking about the Great Flu, weren't you, of 1919?
Yeah.
My great grandfather actually died with that flu, as far as I know. But I'd imagine there wouldn't have been, the way we've all the Facebook stuff and we've all the fake news and all the fear stories going around. They probably likewise wouldn't have had as much news unless it was newspaper. So they mightn't have been as bombarded with the fear. I mean, I don't know, because we didn't live through it. So different times, but absolutely it is. We are so blessed that we are still all able to, and especially any of us that are online. Technology is supporting us now. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
Right. Listen, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thanks for the great tips, right? I really appreciate that. And we'll put in the links for your Prodigy Tennis, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So just that people know where they can follow you, etc., and what you're up to. So thanks a million.
No problem.
Thanks everyone for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in another video again soon. Bye.